Welcome to Rising Tides, the business podcast where we explore how business professionals across industries make waves and rise above the competition. Join Angela Merziff and myself, Kim Hayden, as we talk to inspiring business professionals from entrepreneurs to executives about the strategies and tactics they use to get ahead. From their failures to their successes, you'll get an inside look at what it takes to make it in the business world today. Hey, Angela.
Morning.
Hello. Are you up and awake and ready?
Yeah, getting there.
Well, I know that the next guest, we all talk about what's the one thing we all wish we had more of? Time.
Time.
And not only is she going to help us kind of get some strategies on how to get more time back by simplifying our work time, but also I think she's going to share with us what to do with that time. So, she seems pretty cool.
She's got a lot of hobbies, so I don't think she has a problem filling her calendar, but
Absolutely. All right, folks, we up next have Megan Cain. Megan Cain is an operations expert for entrepreneurs who need to build the back end of their business in order to win back their time and stay ahead of the growth. Megan has worked with authors, coaches, consultants, and nonprofit startups to create businesses with more magic and less admin. In addition to loving all things systems and processes, Megan has built a thriving online, get this, gardening business and has published two books, folks, teaching people how to grow and preserve their own food at home. On the weekends, she's usually out exploring nature and working towards her goal of being on 52 different trails this year alone. That's road biking, hiking, Nordic skiing, mountain biking, and walking. I got the walking part. Let's bring her in. I'm not sure about the rest of it, but
welcome, Megan.
Thank you. Good to see you. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yes,
hey.
we're glad you could join us. Sounds like you would fit in here in Calgary. There's a lot of outdoorsy types around here as well.
Those are my favorite types of places.
Yeah, awesome. Us too. So, yeah, we want to talk about all things operations, systems. I know people don't tune us out. This is important stuff. I know it's not the sexiest of topics, but really, once you implement these things, it can make your business, it can make or break your business, right? Systems and operations. So, we want to pick your brain about this topic today. And I always like to ask my guests, tell us a bit about your backstory and how you got into doing what you do currently. And just tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I am originally from the East Coast of the US in Philadelphia, and I grew up in a little row home with no yard. I didn't know anyone that gardened. I didn't know that gardening was a thing. And eventually, after college, I moved to San Francisco, where I started to think about learning. I wanted to learn how to grow food. And looking back, I have no idea where those thoughts came from, really. But I always think, well, when you're in California, strange things happen to your brain and you have thoughts that you never had before. And so from San Francisco, and I had grown up in a big city, moved to a big city, I moved to a small farm in Missouri in a town of 100 people to learn how to garden. And it was actually a kind of an ecologically focused community that had their own farm. So I went there as an intern. And that's, looking back, one of a really pivotal moment in my life when I made that decision. I had no idea that it would really influence my life going forward and really shot me on a different direction. So I really fell in love with gardening and growing my own food, and really started a new career that I had no idea I wanted to do. And after that, I only stayed in Missouri for about 1.5 years, but I actually met my husband there on that farm. So it affected my life in many different rich ways. But eventually we ended up moving to Wisconsin, where I worked for a nonprofit, an agricultural gardening nonprofit, for about 7 years. And then I had always wanted to start my own business. And I thought, well, I know I'll be ready when I have an idea. And so I decided that I wanted to start a vegetable gardening business because that was my passion. That was also what I was doing for work. And I was very much in the educational realm. So I really wanted to teach other people how to grow their own food. So 10 years, this is a 10-year anniversary this year. I started the Creative Vegetable Gardener, which I always think now, if I knew everything I didn't know about having a business, I think I probably would have been scared. But I was very naive and I just walked into it. And it was a very big learning curve and took a long time to figure out how to have a business. Lots of experimentation and iteration. I did that for about 7 years. And then I was tired of working by myself. I mostly was a solopreneur and I really missed being part of a team and getting to know other people. And so I was ready to move on to something else. And I hired a career coach from Canada, actually, from Winnipeg. And through the process of working with her, I realized, okay, I want to start a different business, another business. And I realized I had learned so much about owning a business that I wanted to help other entrepreneurs with their businesses. So I launched this new business, which is now an ops business. It was really started as a project management business. And it took me a little while to figure out, who do I want to work with? In what ways do I want to work with them? What am I offering? And then I kind of settled on ops because that's how my brain works. So that's been about 3 years. I'm about at the 3-year anniversary, and it's been super fun to learn about a whole new niche, really, besides vegetable gardening. And that's what's landed me here today.
Wow. That's a long, winding path to where you are today. Long, winding garden path.
I know. A lot of people say, oh, did you go to school for, I don't know, I guess operations? I'm like, no. But you never know what things are going to turn into.
Yeah, and I suppose you can draw from all your different backgrounds and experiences and pull that into the business that you're running right now. But tell me a bit about, like, I read on your website, you talk about, well, you just said it right now too, is like, if I knew what I didn't know, I'd be scared to start a business. And I've had this conversation with another friend. It's like, you just kind of have all these, naivetes in your head a little bit. And you don't know what you don't know, but you just move ahead and you figure it out as you go along. As you were building your brand, talk about how you built your brand, like, and how you got to a spot where you're running a really successful website. You were getting, I think it said 600,000 page views a year. How did you get from, just having this idea to having a successful website and a successful brand? And how long did that take? Just give us a snapshot of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question because I think what we see on the surface often with business owners, like, oh, people are overnight success. I heard somebody say I was an overnight, like 17-year success. There was a lot of pain and suffering, I would say, along the way with particularly my vegetable gardening business, because I didn't know a lot and I had to learn a lot, and I don't know. I think I chased a lot of things that were external. They say shiny objects and like listening to a lot of other people instead of kind of figuring out what was best for me. So for this ops business, I was much smarter and realized I'm just going to start with the minimum viable product, right? I'm going to throw up a website. I just bought a template. I'm not going to worry about a name. I'm not going to worry about brand colors. I'm going to write my website to one of my favorite clients. And so I really like writing. And so I just thought about like things that he had said and how I'm helping him, and just kind of did a very simple website. I started out in project management and realized I just have to experiment to figure out what exactly I want to do. So I think with the first business, I felt like I had to figure everything out before I really got started. And the second business, I realized I just need to get clients and start making money. And then I can build out the rest of the business. But I need to test out this idea first. So smarter, I think, and realized what I should and shouldn't be spending time and money on.
Yeah, that's smart. I mean, you had that previous experience with your first business, so you got to learn a few things, which not all of us have the luxury of that. But yeah, I like what you said about just starting small, but starting somewhere, right? Starting small and focusing in on that ideal client, you know,
I
Yeah.
and
I
then
think
build from
it's
there.
I think it's really important though to keep our eyes on scalability, putting basic systems in place, your invoicing system in place, your email system in place. Put these basic systems in place. I see a lot of people that are really talented and they want to go into the mentorship coaching space and they go into the one-on-one because it's the simplest to track and invoice. It's the simplest to nurture. However, it's the hardest to scale. Right. So I think that that's what really triggered me about what you talk about is those back end ops. Like, how do we, where should we be spending the time and where don't we need to spend the time? I don't think you need to spend the time to have 14 different funnels with 14 different programs. But having one program that has, 4 layers deep with the proper invoicing triggers and things like that, that saves a huge amount of time, and yet it takes forever to set up if you don't know what you're doing, right? What are your thoughts on that? Like, what have you found, especially with the way the world has shifted? The world has shifted to where our audience no longer has to be in our backyard. It can be anywhere. What are some things that you've found that work really well for your clients?
Yeah, I think often people bring me in at the point where they have a proven product. Usually, I mostly work with service providers, so they have a proven service that's working, that's getting people results. They have built up a client base, and they're doing everything themselves. So, like, everything's in their head, everything's coming from them. They're working a lot. Maybe they have a small team, but they're still involved in the day to day. And I think if that's anybody listening, I often try to remind my clients that's a natural part of the evolution of your business. Like, sometimes when you start, you're doing everything yourself, and that's okay. And you often get to a point where you can know it's no longer sustainable to do everything yourself, and it's really taking you away from your zone of genius. So my clients, I always say to them, so my clients are mostly CEOs, founders, business owners, so they should be doing only the things that only they can do, and everything else other people should be doing. So that's the ideal. And of course, everybody's business is different, and people have different revenue. But for most of my clients, that means they're coaching, they're teaching, they're writing, they're doing thought leadership, they're relationship building, they're fundraising, depending on what kind of business they have. So that, in the ideal world, that's what you're doing as a business owner, because you're at the visionary seat. So there's 4 different levels of business, and vision is at the top, and then it's strategy and management and implementation. So when you're at the top as the visionary, you should be far away from implementation. You dip your toe into strategy, but you really shouldn't be doing management and implementation. Other people should be doing those things. But that's a process, right? A lot of the clients that I start working with, is like they are doing all of those levels themselves, sometimes with help. But it's a process of starting to extract yourself and getting you up into that top seat, because that's a very unique role. I am not a visionary. I always joke that for my vegetable gardening business, I need a visionary. I need to hire a visionary for that business. So it's a very unique seat to sit in, and only you can sit in it as the business owner. No one else. Some people grow businesses where they realize they're not the visionary, and then they hire a CEO. But for most small businesses, you're the visionary, and you started the business, only you can sit in that seat. And so those are the things that you should be doing. The things that
That
only
makes sense. Oh, sorry. Were you saying something? No, I was going to say this. It reminds me of that book, The E-Myth Revisited, right? I don't know if you've read that book where it talks about you can't be the practitioner and the CEO and all these other things and the manager and on all the things. But that is how we start our businesses, right? And then we just kind of grow out of we grow too big for that. But what are some first things that people can start letting go of and taking those first steps? How do we take those first steps to start letting go of some of those roles?
Yeah, so I think in the online industry particularly, a lot of people say that the first step is, oh, you should just get a VA, which I
Yeah.
don't always agree with, because a VA needs to be managed, right? And so you're going to have to manage the person. You're going to have to communicate all the tasks to them. And so depending on the business owner, that's not always the best first step. I kind of sit in the strategy and the management levels, and because I'm a strategic thinker, I think that people should really invite in a strategy level, at least temporarily, to kind of help you get clear on, I think when you get to the point where you're kind of stuck in the day-to-day and you're feeling overwhelmed, it's hard to lift yourself out and start to really think about, okay, let's get back to the strategy and the vision, because you're kind of drowning in the weeds. And so what I usually do is come in and help my clients. Okay, let's refocus and look at the bigger picture. Let's get back to the vision of the business. What's the original vision that you have? What do you want your business to look like and feel like? And then we start to talk about, we take kind of a deep dive into seven different parts of their business, where I'm asking them lots of questions and taking notes. And we're trying to just, part of it is just getting everything out so that they can have some space to think. And then we can kind of look at it all more strategically and figure out, okay, what are the priorities? What are the most important things that need to be worked on that can propel the business forward? There's always too many things and not enough time. So what are the most important things at this point to work on to move forward? And it's different for every business. It really depends on what stage you're at, what you think your next steps are. I had a client come to me and she said, I know the floodgates are about to open and we are not prepared to accept an influx of business because we don't have the back end built out. But then I've worked with other people that we realized, well, actually, your first hire isn't a VA. It's actually somebody at that management level. So maybe an OBM, so that they can kind of come in with a little bit more leadership and management and help figure out what needs to be done. And then they can hire the VA and manage the VA. So it really depends. I don't really work with like templates or cookie cutter things. Like, everybody's business is very different. And what I do is kind of help people figure out what kind of re-articulate their vision, and then figure out, okay, how do we layer some strategy on that so that we can actually move the vision forward and help it come true.
Okay, so it's different for every person. So it's just, where is your zone of genius and where do you need help with the most? And that's sort of the starting point of the framework you're going to create to help the business owners just level up and free up their time. Right?
Yeah, and most of the time it's it's almost always getting you out of the day-to-day. But how we do that is sometimes different, because some people already have a team, some people don't have a team.
Right.
And the kinds of things that they're doing sometimes are different. The kinds of things they want to continue doing, like there's one of the CEOs I work with, she wanted to get away from meeting with potential new clients. So that business development sales process, she didn't want to do that anymore. She wanted to hire someone to do it. But I have other clients I work with that they do enjoy that process and they want to be involved in the sales calls. But for
I see. So
sure, I would say across the board, it's getting founders and CEOs out of as much implementation as possible.
okay. So I'm just thinking, what are some questions people can start asking themselves? Is it like one, what do I enjoy doing the most? What am I good at? What do I hate doing? What am I
Yeah, I
not
think
good
those
at? Are
are,
those the kinds of questions that we should be asking ourselves?
yeah, I think, yes, those are very good questions to start paying attention to. So when I was meeting with one of my clients recently, we were talking about submitting expenses. And she said, oh, that's the bane of my existence. And I was like, oh, well, then there's no way you should be doing it. Like, you shouldn't be doing that. Who can we assign that to? What system can we set up so that's just being taken care of every month? So I think that is a good way to start. What things are draining you? What things, when you sit down on at your desk, you want to procrastinate, you don't want to do them? Which things do you wish you could just hand over to somebody else? And then, like you said, the flip side is, what are the things that really energize you? What do you love doing? What do you look forward to every day? What are you not getting enough of in your business? And those are start to give you the clues of the things that you should retain and the things that you should start to think about. How can you bring in support so you don't have to do those things that drain you anymore? Which is often the detail work. It's like the systems and the processes and the details. Most visionaries tend not to want to be involved, and those are the things that are really draining.
Well, and I think it's important that people to do a real truth exploration as to what is your aptitude. And then the second part is, how do I let go enough to allow somebody else to fill in the gaps? I know that I've just brought a partner on for my company because we're about to scale next level. And so we have been in full overhaul of our entire back end systems. And I have to keep reminding myself, it's okay. I know I've worked in my files this way for the last 24 months. However, this way is not sustainable when we start bringing on staff to replace everything I've been doing so I can be out front, because I'm an out front. That's my job. My job is the sales, the entertainer, the attractor. And you can't do that. You're trying to find everything in every file everywhere because you want to do it your way. So that's been a big challenge. Do you find that people, when they are on that, they've been going along, it's like it's a hockey stick, right? We've been going along, going along, going along, and they're literally at that point where it's about to ready to go up. That's the hardest point. Do you find that people have resistance? Their struggle with that, I've been doing it this way and it works, so why doesn't it work this way?
Yeah, I think it's true. Yeah, and a lot of times the first steps is just figuring out how have you been doing it, and let's just extract that, and then we can look at it to see, can we simplify it? Can we streamline it? How do we set it up so that somebody else can come in and take it over?
That's the big one.
So a
That's the
lot of it is extract, and if you have a team as well, where I've worked with teams where everything's in the team members' heads. So it lives with the CEO, some of the tasks, but some of the things are team members, but it's not written down anywhere. Everything is in people's heads. So there is a process of kind of extracting. I've worked with teams where I just meet with people and say, okay, tell me about the proposal process. You're in charge of meeting with clients and sending proposals. What are the steps? What does it look like? What are the gaps? Where do you think the ball gets dropped? What do you think could be improved about this process? So it's kind of taking a look at, and it sounds like that's what you're doing in your business, Kim, like taking a look at the processes and the systems to see if you have them, if they're working well and how they could be improved. But a lot of clients when I first start working with them, there aren't that many systems and processes. It's all in either their head or they're in the team's heads.
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge, is those systems and processes. That's Angela's strength, is everything has to have a system, it has to be a process. Whereas I'm like, just do it first and then we'll build the system.
And I could be
Yeah.
better too. Like I had a business partner who really taught me some good systems as well, but it's hard because it takes a lot of work up front, right? And so, that leading into my next question is asking you like, what are some of the fears that people have? Because I know, for me, it's like, okay, well, I can hire somebody to do this, but are they going to do a good job? Are they going to, I've had some hiring, flops. I've had some hiring, people that have been great. So it's like that letting go process, um, understanding that it could go either way. And what if, like, what's the contingency plan if, I outsource this thing like accounting and bookkeeping? That's not my thing, right? At all. I would rather die. I'd rather gouge my eyes out with rusty spoons than do that kind of stuff, right? So, but then I've had accountants and bookkeepers that they've totally made, dog's breakfast of things. So there's that fear there that they're not going to do a good job. Other tasks that are more creative, like I'm a branding expert, design, and all that. And I've tried to hire myself out in some aspects, and clients are used to my creative work, right? And then they're like, well, we don't like this other person's creative work. So what do we do there? So that's a fear too, right? And I think that holds us back. So how do you talk your clients through some of these fears?
Yeah, and definitely those fears are valid, and I think no matter what kind of even hiring is unfortunately sometimes hit or miss. I feel like that's where it's important as an entrepreneur for myself as well to have a really strong network so that I can go to my community of other entrepreneurs and ask for referrals. So that's my preference even when my clients, if they're looking for an OBM or a VA, like the first place I always go is to my community of other entrepreneurs. For me, it's a lot of ops people. And do you have a person, a VA that you recommend, or do you have a PR communications person, or whatever I'm looking for? If it's a specialist or more of a generalist, I try to find referrals.
That's smart.
That's the first step because then they're already somewhat vetted. I think being very clear on what you want the person to do. So having a job description that has very clear tasks. When I help clients with hiring, and that's the first step is what is this person going to do? What tasks? How many hours? I see job postings all the time where there is no job description. People say like, "Hey, I need a VA. Send me a DM." And you're like, wait, what? There's no clarity here. Like, what is the person working on? So I think that is kind of goes back to the strategy. What are the things that you need help with? And who would do that? Is it is it a specialist? Is it a VA? Is it an OBM? Is it a consultant? I think sometimes people hire a VA or an OBM and expect them to be everything and be kind of servicing them at a higher level than really they're getting paid for and what they're trained for. So one of my clients always says, "Oh, you're my strategic thought partner." Well, that's because she hired me at a certain level. Like I'm a director of operations. So the expectation is my expectation as well for a director level is like someone who's really thinking strategically and can partner with the CEO on a lot of things, right? She brings me a lot of things that she wants my feedback on or my opinion about, or we kind of wrestle with problems together. So I think you have to be really clear about if you think about those three other levels, strategy, management, implementation, where do you need that person to sit? Because you can't hire an implementer and expect them to be your strategic thought partner. And so I do think sometimes that lack of clarity about what you really need leads to some hiring missteps because you hire somebody that can't actually deliver what you're looking for.
Well, and I know that I've made that mistake because I didn't understand what I was asking for. So until I took a step back and I started doing a deep dive into the one specific thing, And I had to spend my time. I needed to research. Did not mean that I was learning to do it. I knew that I needed to know how to ask for it. And then that gave me clarity with the VAs, and I was able to give them direct examples as opposed to just saying, build me a workflow process with 4 email sequences and automated 4-month invoicing. But for what? And why do we want that to go out to? Who do we want that to go out to? I had to understand exactly what I was asking for them to build it. And
Right.
I found that I was not getting very far 2 years ago until I took that approach. Even though I don't wanna know how to do something, I need to know what it does so I can ask for it.
Right. Right. So you kind of have, as it sounds like you as the CEO had to, it was you communicating with an implementer. So you really kind of have to fill in those other two roles, which is the strategy and the management, to be able to hand it over to them.
Exactly.
So I think people need to figure out, do you want to have to do all three of those roles to communicate with their implementer, or do you want to fill in some of those other levels? So for a lot of my clients, sometimes I manage the VA, and I'm the one
Awesome.
I'm
Yep.
helping the visionary get clear on the strategy and what they want to happen, and then translating that to the VA. So sometimes I think like I'm like the bridge person sometimes between
Where
the team and the visionary.
And Megan, where were you 18 months ago, man? I couldn't use that. You know how many times I've cried because I just got so frustrated. I couldn't figure it out. And, what was that time worth? If I go back 18 months, how much, like, I believe that somebody of your skill sets, you make 3 times that investment just by expediting the entire scenario. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a missing part of the conversation in online businesses, because I think a lot of people are like, just hire a VA from the Philippines and all your problems will be solved. And it's like, no, you actually might have new problems.
Yep.
They might solve some, but there might be new because of those levels and like misaligned expectations. So I would say that to business owners, like if you can afford to hire more of a specialist, at least to help you get more clear and organized, I do think it pays off, because I do think a lot of people spend a lot of money on kind of lower paid assistants and they don't get their needs met. And then they're frustrated. And so that's why, of course, I'm biased towards strategy, because that's how I think. It's like, I would like to see people investing in the strategy before moving down to the managing and the implementation to help get that clarity.
Yeah, and something just clicked for me. I hadn't thought about it this way, but you kind of you outlined it as kind of a ladder. So you talked about the CEO, the visionary, then the strategist, then the manager, and then the implementer. And so you're at the CEO at the top. If you're hiring an implementer, you have to also fill in those other roles to get the right communication down to the implementer. And I hadn't ever thought about it that way, but that's where it kind of breaks up usually, is when we kind of skip all those roles and we just, skip giving them, the implementer, that information that's necessary in order for them to be able to be on the same page as us, the vision page as us, to fulfill that. So that something just clicked for me there. So again, it's about figuring out what roles can I fulfill, what roles am I good at, what roles do I want to fulfill, and then filling in those other roles that I can easily, the chain, the communication chain won't break.
Yeah, because that's why I think sometimes when people just have a VA, and I've worked with amazing VAs, and they're a big asset to a lot of people's businesses. So it's nothing about VAs. It's more just thinking about those levels. And it's like, yeah, the business owner is still tired and overworked because they're still trying to fill these other two
Right.
positions of strategy and management. So it's like, well, maybe you took away one level, but you're still trying to cover three, which is exhausting.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about your system of how you work in creating these strategies for your clients. So you talk about the 4 S's on your website about strategy, structure, systems, and support. Could you kind of give us a little bit of a hint about what happens in each stage and how that framework works and is beneficial for businesses?
Yeah, sure. So we've talked a bunch about strategy because that's one of my passions, and I'm a
Yeah.
strategic thinker. So pretty much when people come to me, the first step is that we go through strategic mapping, which is several sessions that I mentioned a little bit before, is that we're taking kind of a deep dive into your business where we're going through 7 different parts of your business. I'm asking you tons of questions about what's working, what's not working, where are there gaps, what could be improved, what are you doing that you really don't like, what are you doing that you would like to keep doing, and I'm taking copious notes. And then from those meetings, we kind of have it all laid out. So I work on organizing it, pairing things together, figuring out what's projects, what are tasks. Um, and it's like your brain downloaded into my notes, and then I'm trying to organize it so then we can go back together and take a look at everything and think about, okay, what are the priorities, what are the most important things to help move the needle forward. You can't do everything the next quarter, so we usually talk about the next 2 to 3 quarters of what are the priority projects, who's going to be the project lead. So in an ideal world, the CEO is not the project lead on most of those projects, it's team members. Talk about timelines, uh, and then kind of see what the next steps are. And a lot of times people come to me and they either don't know what the next step should be, like they're just feeling overwhelmed and stuck in the weeds, or they have an idea of what they think the next step should be. But until we go through the strategic mapping, we really don't know. Like, I don't know until I get in your business and we start talking about it. And so it's kind of a magical process because we go in it together and we don't really know what we're going to discover. It's a lot of unearthing things. And then at the end, there is a moment, at least for me, and I think for the business owner as well, but all of a sudden it clicks and like, oh, now I can see it. These are the next few steps. And so that's really the strategy, the beginning of the strategy piece, really getting clear on how do we connect the vision to that next piece, which is strategy, so that we can start to bring the vision into fruition, really. Um, and then under that really is kind of that structure. And so then once we're kind of clear on some of the strategy, it's like, okay, so then does the structure match what we've unearthed? Like, what does the team look like? What are the products and services look like? What do you need more support? What, so all that kind of the bigger business system, we think about. And then under that, then within the system is kind of like the scaffolding of all of the systems and processes. So usually what we unearth is like, oh yeah, there's things that we need to get off the business owner's plate. There's systems and processes that could make a lot of things easier. Not always, because sometimes there's some visionaries are ops minded and already have some of those systems set up, but often it's like, okay, now we need to get other people in to run the systems. And then also the support is we're thinking about, yeah, do you have the support you need on those different levels? Is the team supporting you in the way that you need to be supported? If not, what's missing? Is there some communication missing? So one of my clients, when we were working through the strategic mapping, she said, my team is craving structure. Like, they want more direction. They want more structure. They want systems. They need more clarity. And so just really thinking about, if you already have a team, if you think things aren't gelling, what's missing? And often it is that communication, because the visionary's out doing their amazing visionary things, and then sometimes the team's over here and they're like, what should we be doing? What should we be working on? So So yeah, it kind of depends, like what the strategy, it always starts with the strategy, and then what comes out of there is really depends on the person's business and what areas do they need more systems work. Do they need, sometimes it's, we need to work on the support because they need to hire 1 or 2 people or maybe shift their team. And sometimes it is the structure. I worked with somebody recently where what kept coming up is that she was really the founder and she had a team of coaches that worked with her, and she was trying to run the business cooperatively, and it really wasn't working. And so a lot of what we talked about is the structure of her business really wasn't working. Being actually the CEO, but trying to run this cooperative business. So it was like, okay, what really needs to happen as the first step is realigning, really getting clear with herself of what do you want this business to look like, and what do you want your role in this business to be, and what do you want your team, the other coaches' role to be. And so we were taking a big step back of like, let's reevaluate how the business is set up as the first step. And then we realized, okay, she also needs an operations person because she's doing all the ops. So, but it was like, but first we need to get clear on the structure, and then we can get you the support that you need, because then we'll be a little bit more clear about, well, we'll be a lot more clear about what that person is going to be working on, what's the scope of their job. So yeah, it's kind of, I like I said before, every business is so different. People's visions are different. So it's fun. It's like I said, it's kind of a magical process where until I get to know a business owner and a business, it's like, well, we don't really know. We have to take a deep dive. I don't go into people's business and be like, you have to do this, this, and this. It's like, no.
Yeah.
There are a lot of commonalities between businesses, but they're also very unique to the owner as well.
Yeah, you sound like you work a lot like I do. You know, when a client comes to me and they are like, I need a new logo, I need a new website. Well, or they've rushed to do that themselves and it's not working. It's usually because we rushed to the thing, right? We're doing the thing and we haven't done any of the strategy work, and we haven't figured out, you know, why we're doing the thing and what thing actually needs to be done. So I'm glad you take the time and do that. So it kind of sounds like your clients are sort of in the same boat, you know, a different problem, but same boat as me, where maybe they've tried implementing something, it's not working, or they don't know what, something's not working, something's off. They don't know why, they don't know what it could be, but they know they need to do something differently than what they're currently doing.
Yeah. I ask a lot of questions.
Me too. Do you see any mistakes that people make if they've tried to implement some systems and operations themselves? What are the common mistakes that you see that folks make that we haven't already talked about, like hiring a VA? Is there anything else that might be hindering them?
I think not sticking to the system. Some people set up
Sticking to
systems
it,
and
yeah.
they never use it.
True,
So
true.
systems are kind of living things. Like you kind of have to accept that you don't just set up a system and then you never have to improve it or change it or that you don't even use it. You have to use it in order to figure out its evolution, really. Like I know when I first set up a system, I'm not thinking that the first time I use it and build it, that's the be all and end all. It's like people have to test it out and then we can refine it. So it is a process of refining, which I think people don't always really love or realize. But systems, I mean, if you think about nature and the natural world, like systems evolve and change. They're not static. And so I think that's one thing to accept. And then I think for a lot of CEOs, like they try to build the systems themselves and they don't like doing that. So I think it's good to realize you may know that you need systems, but you don't have to be the person that's building it. You could bring someone in to do it. It's like, that's okay. If you don't like building systems, that's perfectly okay. And frankly, you shouldn't really be building systems anyway. Your team should be helping you do that, or like a systems I recently read the book Systemology, and he calls it the systems champion. So if you have kind of the systems champion in your business, which could be like an OBM, or it could be anybody, an ops manager, an ops coordinator, but somebody that's kind of helping steward the systems. So yeah, I think that's a common mistake to think like, oh, I need systems. I need to set up all the systems myself. You don't. And in fact, I
Yeah.
don't think you shouldn't be as the CEO.
Yeah, I think we have almost like a founder's guilt because we think we should be good at all things, and we're overachievers because we're business owners, we're entrepreneurs, we should be able to do everything. And so we have this almost like this guilt, like, I should be able to do this. I'm just going to take a swing at it and go for it. And, I hope it works out. But the other thing is, I don't think we're in the weeds of the business, and we don't always see everything clearly on our own. So, I mean, that's why businesses have advisors, right? And other people that can come in with a sort of a different lens and help us see things that we don't necessarily see ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I say to my clients, I'm in a lot of people's businesses, so I'm able to
Yeah.
cross-pollinate ideas and like, ooh, that person does that. That's a really good idea. That would work for this business. And so there is a benefit to working with people that have been in lots of people's businesses, because then they have a bigger idea of all the different possibilities and configurations of things.
Yeah, exactly. I love how you use the cross-pollination gardening reference too. That's perfect.
Can't help it. Comes out.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, lots of good things to chew on here, Kim. Right? Oh, I think you're muted, or am I muted?
I'm here. I'm muted.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. That's the only way anybody gets anything in otherwise. So no, it's fascinating because I've gone through a lot of this the hard way. And like a lot of CEOs, you start something one way and then it morphs and it morphs and it morphs and morphs. So there are all these little tiny failures, right? You need failure in order to have success. Nobody, as you said, Megan, is an overnight success. Brene Brown got famous off the one thing she wanted retracted. So I think being truly authentic to yourself, but then letting go. That's the big one I'm hearing is letting go, understanding, and we all have limitations. I'm working. I like I said, I brought on a senior production manager, and I said to him right from the beginning. I said, if you feel resistance, it's not because what you're doing is wrong. It's because it's not the way I've been doing it. And I'm not a learner. I'm a doer. That's what I do. I'm the person that gets burned 4 times doing the same thing before I realize on the 5th time I'm probably gonna get burned. So, but it's I think the big one, I finally realized what I need as, as a CEO. A lot of us need to learn leadership, not management. We're working to be managers, not leaders. And as soon as we take our head out of the management, that micromanagement space, and we allow the people that we trust and we bring in to fulfill the jobs that need to be done so you can scale, because a business that isn't scaling is this business, honestly, that's not thriving. It's hard to sustain. It's like being the same weight when you're 50 that you were when you're 30. It's a little bit harder, you know? But, yeah, I'm just listening to everything, and it's like, literally, where were you 18 months ago, Megan? Because so much of the tens of thousands of dollars I've spent doing it the wrong way that got me no further. And
And what do you I'm just curious, what did the wrong way look like for you?
the wrong way, I hired I went the VA route. And that didn't work. That cost me, $8,500 USD, which is like $1 million Canadian. I'm joking, folks. I'm joking. Our dollar's not that bad. I was going down kind of the wrong path on how to build the infrastructure because I didn't understand what I was asking for. Instead of stepping back, so what I've done differently this year is I stepped back from everything and said, okay, if I want it to be here, who is doing it there? Because trust me, folks, there's nothing original. There's millions of people that can do what we're doing. The only thing original is my voice of how I approach it, right? So that's what I did is I got out of my own way. I found the people that were doing it and doing it well as far as I was concerned. And then I started breaking down what is their invoicing? What does their CTA look like? What does their automation look like? What am I missing? And by then digging into that, I was able to find the right people and say, this is what I want done. I don't want to do it. I want you to do it, but this is exactly what I want done. And here is an exact example. And as soon as I did that and I came out of my own head of envisioning what it should be, and found practical solutions, answers, systems, and people have implemented it, it was able to change. But I could have done that with you, Megan. I could have done that with you 18 months prior when I was spending tens of thousands of dollars because I didn't know what I was asking for. And
Right.
that's what I want to say right now is I'm listening to what you're saying. Like Angela said, it didn't even dawn on me that there was people between me and that VA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And are you necessarily good at filling in those roles, or do you want to fill in those roles? And for me, another thing you talked about when I asked you, how do we mitigate these problems? And of course, your answer was more systems. So creating a job description. I've never even thought of that. Even if you're just hiring, if you're asking for referrals, have a job description ready that you can send out and find the person that can fill the role instead of, filling the role to the person or whatever. We kind of go about things backwards, right? We don't have that clear description, that job description, and then finding that person that matches that job description. It would be so much easier if you just had that down in place.
Yeah. So what what I hear you both saying is kind of reflecting back. It's about slowing down, which is sometimes very difficult. I mean, it's hard when you're a business owner. You're kind of full speed ahead, and I think visionaries have a lot of dreams and ideas and take action. But it's like slowing down so that you can get the clarity, so then you can be strategic in whatever the next steps are. And that's really kind of what I love to help people do is like, okay, let's slow down, let's get some more clarity. And then from that clarity, then we can take strategic action. We don't want to just take action just to take action. And we don't know how it's connected to everything else. So yeah, slowing down.
And then we have less of a hard time letting go because we've done all that background work, right? And we're
right. That's a good point. That's a good point. Then you can feel confident that your vision is being held.
Yes.
And that the how, that you hire people to figure out the how, but they understand the what, because you're clear on the what, they're clear on the what, and then you kind of empower them to go forward with the how and figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, thank you for talking to us through all of this, Megan. Where can folks find you online if they want to find more about you, connect with you online?
Yeah, you can find me. My website's Megan Cain, CAIN. Megan, MEGAN, CAIN.com. You can find me there. My gardening website, if you're a gardener, is creativevegetablegardener.com. Both websites, you can sign up for my email list. The gardening website, I send out an email every Sunday morning with seasonal discussions, tips, videos, blog posts about whatever's going on in the gardening season. And then, yeah, on my ops website, I love meeting folks. You can book a call, even if you just want to say hi and have a coffee chat or talk about ops, or you think you might need some help in your business. I'm an extrovert, so I love meeting people. And so you can book a call or send me an email or sign up for my email list. And I send out little nuggets of operations wisdom when they strike me.
Yeah. Sounds like a valuable newsletter. I think I'll be signing up myself because I can always use help in that area, as well as gardening, as we talked about earlier. But we won't get into that right now.
Right now, they're two
Um,
separate newsletters. Maybe someday I'll figure
yeah.
out how to combine them, but
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Megan. I think you're off again,
I am.
Kim.
I am. I
Yeah.
think you know what? We have learned so much today. I appreciate everything, and I am hoping that somebody hears all this and they can prevent that painful period where they could actually scale if they just invested in the right people, the right person like Megan. Thank you.
yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. I always love talking about operations and businesses.
All righty. All right,
All
folks.
right.
Hang tight. Watch this super duper outro. Until next time. This show is sponsored by Be Bold Branding. Kick that yawn-inducing mission statement to the curb. Visit BeBoldBranding.ca and grab your Bold Manifesto Workbook to create a bold message that connects. Thank you for joining us here at Rising Tides, your business podcast. Be sure to like, subscribe, comment, and share. And you can follow Angela and Kim over on LinkedIn.